folks, and welcome to Typology, the show on which we explore the story of you through the lens of the Enneagram. Hope you all had a fantastic holiday weekend. This is Anthony Skinner, producer of the show. I've got a giveaway for you at the end of this intro if you stay tuned, but first I have to say, hey, how about that interview last week with Brant Hansen? We've been getting so much commentary on it. It was such a great interview. Go back and listen to that one if you haven't already. And you are going to be pumped about today's interview with Rick Hamlin. We're talking about mindfulness and meditation. Rick has his brand new book, Even Silence is Praise. Of course, Rick was longtime editor at Guidepost magazine, and he has done a deep dive into mindfulness and meditation. And of course, you know we love our mindfulness and meditation here at the Typology Podcast. So this is a fantastic episode, and I'm sitting here with this book, and I just thought, you know what? Rick was kind enough to send a few books our way, and he signed this copy, and so here is the deal. For any of you who listen to this podcast, head on over to social media on Instagram and leave a post about this week's episode and mention at Typology Podcast. You have to mention at Typology Podcast, or I won't see your name. But if you mention this week's episode at Typology Podcast with Rick Hamlin on Instagram, I'll take all those names, throw them in a hat, pull out one, and send you a signed copy of his brand new book, Even Silence is Praise. It will be well worth your time. That's it for me, Anthony Skinner. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And now, here's the host of our show, Ian Cron.
Rick Hamlin, Enneagram 2, author of the new book, Even Silence is Praise, Quiet Your Mind and Awaken Your Soul with Meditation. Welcome to Typology.
Woohoo! Thank you. Thanks, Ian.
We are delighted to have you, and I am so excited about this conversation because prior to hitting record, we had already a rich deep dive into common friends and talking about our common passion, really, for silence and for meditation and for contemplation. Mm-hmm. We have so many similarities and interests along this line. And I can't wait for our folks to hear this, Anthony, because, as you know, I have long been an evangelist for a daily meditative practice, if for no other reason but to help people on the journey towards self-discovery, to learn how to train and discipline their attention so that they have the capacity to stand back and self-observe the machinations of their Enneagram type, right? Apart from, I don't know how else you do it. So let's hop in, Rick. I've already spoken too much. We're living in very challenging times. And we know that there's a mental health crisis. Recently, at the State of the Union address, our president made a big deal of that problem. We have anxiety and shame and depression. Talk to me about the intersection of mental health and spirituality and meditation.
Wow. Well, exactly the Enneagram and meditation. I mean, it's just like what you say. When you sit silently, you get to know yourself a lot better. And people get really anxious about it. They constantly say to me, oh, I'm so bad about it. I sit there and I can't quiet my mind because there's so much thoughts that come in and so many distractions. And I always say, but that's it. Hearing what your mind is saying when you kind of get quiet is an incredible gift. You're opening yourself up to yourself and to God when you do that.
Yes. And, we're going to plunge more into this. We're going to revisit that question. I'm going to back up a little bit. But I think for me, the word that has always resonated is that in a meditation practice, and it is a practice, so I tell people all the time, listen, it's a practice. It's supposed to be hard at first, right? That's why we practice, right? The scales on the piano are hard until you do them a lot, right? And but people these days always want to hack. how do I hack silence? And it's like, well, good luck. It just doesn't really work. Let's back up again before we hit this mental health thing. Enneagram 2, you're a helper. Tell people, how did you get introduced to the Enneagram, and what's it like to be an Enneagram 2?
Well, when you kind of go down the rabbit hole of self-knowledge, my first thing, I got Myers-Briggs, and that I found very helpful in a workplace situation. But now, as I'm in a journey to become a spiritual director, I've also gotten the Enneagram, and it's, anything that can help you know yourself better helps you understand others, and also understand how you're interacting with others.
Yes, and there goes the case for developing a meditation practice that empowers or strengthens your attention to mindfully observe the thoughts and the stories that your mind is producing all the time. And then you're able to observe your behavior. So, for example, as an Enneagram 2, if you have a strong meditation practice, you will learn how to know when your giving is calculated and strategic rather than altruistic. He's smiling, everybody. He's smiling. Why are you smiling so wide-mouthed? I'm seeing a lot of teeth.
Yeah, well, when I'm sitting there and I do this on our lumpy sofa in what we call the television room, even though there hasn't been a TV in here for years, and so those little things come into my head. Oh gosh, have we paid the bill yet? Oh my God. Oh yeah, that person. I should call them. Oh, text them, email them. And so, what's valuable about that is it's also my prayer time. So before I kind of run off typing away on the text, the emails, I can also pray for them. And so I'm bringing God into this situation. So that helps me from running out of myself, because it might be just one of those things that God can say, let's just let that go for a little while, Rick. Okay, thanks. Thank you for that.
Hey everybody, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, BetterHelp Online Therapy, for helping us bring you what I hope is great content every week. I myself, as a therapist, am obviously a big proponent of counseling. It's an amazing tool for identifying what's interfering in your relationships or creating stress in your life, and then helps you work through those blocks. For example, people don't always realize that physical symptoms like headaches, teeth grinding, and even digestive issues can be indicators of stress. And let's not forget about doom scrolling, sleeping too little, sleeping too much, undereating, or overeating. Stress shows up in all kinds of ways. And in a world that tells us to do more, sleep less, and grind all the time, sometimes we need a reminder to take care of ourselves. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to, and can schedule sessions when it's convenient for you. And best of all, it's much more affordable than in-person therapy. Now listen, everybody, I want you to start living a happier life today. Give it a try and see if online therapy can help lower your stress. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Typology listeners will get 10% off their first month by visiting betterhelp.com/typologypodcast. Again, that's BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/typologypodcast, TYPOLOGYPODCAST. Okay, so I have patterns of thought that come up. In fact, someone once said to me, and I think it was actually based on some scientific evidence, right? That we have roughly 50 to 80,000 discrete thoughts in a given day.
Right.
And most of those thoughts are repeats. In other words, there's very little new material that's going through our head, right? And there are patterns that you begin to see arise, right? So for me as an Enneagram 4, I know that there are certain things that I think about that are very characteristic of a 4, right? I think a lot about the past. You as a 2, Rick, tend to think more about the present, right? So for example, I got to send an email. I got to send a text, because 2s are typically more present oriented. 4s are more past oriented. So that's one thing. Or I might feel or begin to think, my thoughts might become melancholic or unhelpfully nostalgic, and that's a very 4 pattern, right? So Rick, I want to know, what are the repetitive thoughts that go through your mind? And let's see if any of them are rooted in Enneagram 2 patterns.
That is a really helpful thought. I had never, that the thoughts are concerned with the present. Well, that is so true. And you know what it is? There's also the scheduling brain.
Yes.
It's as though there's, an Excel spreadsheet in the head, and it's trying to work all those things in. But at least the Excel spreadsheet tells you you've only got 24 hours in a day. But that other, what I find, the gift of a prayer meditation time means that when those 82,000 thoughts recur through the day, I've connected them with my faith journey, or I've also acknowledged the God part of them. So it's a way of doing the old pray without ceasing, because they're acknowledged right early, and then, oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you. Because you don't want to be just repeating yourself over and over again. What a waste of energy.
Yes.
Can you?
You
Oh,
have
that's
so
right.
many insights in this, my friend. I want to hear you preach it, man. Take it.
No. But I do want to know, you said earlier, I need to get a hold of him. I need to do this. I need to do that. And all of them sounded as if many of your thoughts are grounded in relationships. Is that the case, or?
Of course. I mean, I'm also pretty extroverted. I love people. I've got 2 new grandbabies, one on this coast, one on the other coast. So the relationships, but maybe, there's the upside and the downside. You find yourself in relationships. You learn about yourself in relationships. The downside is, oh wait, there's nobody around here. Who am I? I don't count. Mm-hmm. So the silence is being sure I'm a friend with myself, rather than just, defining myself by other people.
And that's a big part of the Enneagram 2's journey, right? Which is to not make relationships, which is what they think about when they go to bed at night and what they think about when they get up in the morning.
Can I ask a question off of what you said earlier? Because we sort of skipped by it. Ian asked you, what are some of those repeating thoughts?
Yes.
And as you were talking about it, you came to a point and you said, oh, that's right. Thank you. It was like what is it? What are those thoughts where you have to slow yourself down and remind yourself and then reconnect with God, which is sound like what you were doing? I just want to reiterate or dive back into what are those repeating thoughts you have that you have to be aware of or catch yourself on?
Well, what you're catching yourself on is are you Mr. Fix-It, or is the divine your partner and is Mr. Fix-It? Or in fact, the divine might be even the better doer. It's maybe stepping in prematurely or just mucking up.
Yes. Well, and that's that's what I was trying to get at here was, you just said it, Mr. Fix-It. Enneagram 2s tend to be Mr. and Mrs. Fix-Its. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Particularly in the area of relationships. Mm-hmm. I need to call this person. Oh, I need to find out how they're doing. I need to check in with them. 2s are very focused on meeting the needs of others, of helping others. That's a strategy that they employ when they're not very self-aware to win the approval, the appreciation of others, right? Is I'm going to meet your needs. And by meeting your needs, I kind of quietly expect that you'll meet my needs without my having to come right out and ask for you to do that.
Yeah, I should say. I think I should wear this hat that says "Need me, need me."
That's it, Rick. That is the Enneagram 2. And so, every type, would have, and I could go through them, but they would definitely have type-related thought patterns. And to be able to recognize them and not be tyrannized by them is kind of a big part of what I think a meditation practice can do for people who are using the Enneagram as a tool for spiritual formation.
Well, I guess, what you're saying is it really love that, because what our goal in life is to love. Is it really love if it's all just about serving your needs and not theirs? Or being aware of theirs. So this is the growth thing that you just have to keep pushing yourself through, or at least I do, my friend.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about how silence can help us develop the muscle of attention that gives us the capacity to observe ourselves, and hopefully with tremendous compassion, with a sense of humor, to be able to go, oh, that thought again. You know what I mean? Or when we have a thought that isn't particularly wonderful, I guess what's the word that Eastern Orthodox uses? Is it logosmoi? When your thoughts begin to run riot and to just not take them very seriously, even the distressing ones, that's just what the mind does. The mind secretes thoughts the way that your thyroid, secretes, enzymes or whatever the thyroid does. All right, so we've covered that. Someone wants to begin a meditative journey. How does that happen?
You know what? There are two things. Find a time and find a place. Mm-hmm. And, we usually think, oh, yeah, the time. The other thing, when you do it, you have to do it every day. Mm-hmm. And if somebody says, I can only do it for 5 minutes, I say, fine, but make sure it's 5 minutes every day.
Yes.
Because circling back to it again and again is what works. And then I say, find a place, because my lumpy couch, when I taking the subway to work, the A train, the place becomes your signal. Oh yeah, okay. This is when I'm checking in. I'm checking out to check in. So it's those two things, and then the practice of, for me, it has to be with my eyes closed. There are practices where I tend to meditate on just an image, and it's not an image of Jesus. It's not an image of myself. It tends to be just sort of negative space. But there's also the practice of using a single word, God, peace, love, sin, maybe, which comes from a wonderful, The Cloud of Unknowing. An author wrote The Cloud of Unknowing in the 14th century. So I'm jumping all over the place, my friend. But all you have to do it is the thing about prayer. Trying is doing. It's the only thing out there I can think of where trying is doing.
Yes. And you've said a couple of really helpful things. So the first one for me is set a place mark in your day. So for me, it's in the morning. I try not to have a cup of coffee beforehand because it jazzes me up. And so I have a place. I have a meditation cushion. I have a traditional, you mostly see them, I found it in a Buddhist meditation center, a zabuton, which is a cushion that goes under it. So I'm on the floor cross-legged. And then when you set the time, if it's for 5 minutes, if it's for 3 minutes, because that's all you have, do it. Because Then the next day, we obviously would like people to eventually reach a place, I think, of 20 to 25 minutes is a good time. But you can't start there. You got to start at like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, get your body. It's like you don't train for a marathon on your first day by running 15 miles. If you've never run a race before, you start with half a mile for a week every day. And then you build up, right? And then you might even find that after 5 minutes, you actually have a hunger to go for 10. And then you follow that intuition, right? Or that impulse. So, all right. So, but during the time of meditation, Rick, because there's so many styles of meditation, right? There's a mindfulness meditation, which is, I don't want to say, actually in the scientific tradition, there's a mindfulness practice, right? I don't want to say atheistic. It's not a God practice. Then you have centering prayer, which is where the work is to completely focus one's attention on the repeating word. Let's say on the inhale, you might say, when I use centering prayer, which isn't that often, like on the inhale, I use the word Maranatha, right? Come, Lord Jesus, come. And then I'll say Mara on the inhale and Natha on the exhale. Okay? And whenever my attention or I get pulled away by thoughts or ideas or stories, I can catch myself and go, oh, planning mind, scheduling mind, whatever. And then you bring your attention back to the word, right? And there are other styles too, Rick. What other ones that are available to people?
Well, I was thinking also Lectio Divina, which is a little bit like centering prayer, where you turn and you take just a phrase from the from the Bible, and you use that that's a wonderful, ancient practice to kind of circle your mind back then. And then, like I said, the one from the Cloud of Unknowing, where you use a single word. And he's the author of the Cloud of Knowing, a single syllable word, interestingly enough.
Yes.
One syllable. Wow.
Yes.
Ding. It's like the little bell.
Yeah, it's like a little bell, right? Now, the problem for me with the Lectio one, and of course it's quite valid, but for me and personally in my own practice, is that it tends to trigger the discursive mind. So in other words, maybe I come up with a phrase or a sentence from Scripture, then I start to theologically unpack it. My mind starts to go, or a feeling comes up and I start to focus on the feeling. Or, you know what I mean? And so, to me, meditation, is more of a practice of emptying the mind, quieting the mind, focusing the mind on a word or on nothing. Because honestly, in that you called it negative space. For me, when I just try to clear the mind and focus on my breath or on a word from Scripture, whatever it might be, then what begins to happen is I'm giving in that silence, because Protestants particularly, they just talk too damn much. You know what I mean? It's just like, why do you talk so much? And so what happens is when I go into that space, all I want to do is give God consent to do what He chooses to do in my wiring during that silence. Just trusting that some activity of grace of God is happening in the silence, though it may not be perceptible to me, and just to rest in the divine. How does that ring with you? Does that sound like a? Tell me, is that a separate practice? What is that? Anthony, have you noticed our weather is changing here in Nashville and the days are getting longer?
Oh man, I love that it is staying light longer.
Well, springtime brings along new curiosities and a chance for kids to connect with the world around them. There are so many opportunities to learn, and it's the perfect time of year for discoveries. With KiwiCo, kids can explore STEAM topics each month, ranging from rainbows to rocket ships and everything in between.
I love this.
With a KiwiCo subscription, kids, and by the way, grown-ups, can discover something new all year long. Through hands-on art and science projects, kids can discover the engineering and mechanics behind everyday objects. the science behind the chemistry of cooking, geography, new cultures, and brand new art and design techniques. These are real engineering, science, and art projects. And Anthony,
Yes.
there's no commitment.
Ooh, I like that.
So you can pause or cancel at any time. You know my assistant, Wendy.
Oh, absolutely.
Would we be able to function without her?
No, we would not.
She has 2 young boys, 8 and 10, and they love their screen time. But they get even more excited when they receive their new kit each month. This month, they got to make their own geometric drawing machine.
Oh, man, that sounds fun. I want to be a part of that.
It's an easy way for parents to foster creativity in their children. I encourage our listeners to step into spring and celebrate the season of discovery with a KiwiCo subscription. You know what's coming, Anthony.
Tell us.
Right now, you can get 30% off your first
Woo, woo,
month,
woo.
plus free shipping on any crate line with code Typology at KiwiCo.com. That's 30% off your first month at KiwiCo.com. Promo code Typology. Tell me, is that a separate practice? What is that?
That's exactly it. And in fact, Lectio Divina acknowledges that it's, that early stage is discursive, but you go through the discursive to get to that place where you're contemplative. But yeah, exactly that place that you're talking about. One of the gifts I find is that when I go to that place, I have the comfort of knowing there's thousands, millions of people in the world doing it at the same time. And there you are in Nashville, there I am in New York, there's somebody out there in California, there's somebody in Montana, there's somebody across the ocean. I am so naive or idealistic. I believe this is how we change the world. You change yourself, and then you, one by one, and we change the world. So when I'm feeling that emptiness, I know it's also, maybe this is the 2 in me too. I know it's also feeling there's somebody there with me too.
That's, I think, not to tap too deep into Carl Jung, but I do think there's a collective unconscious. I do believe that prayer, actually the best correlate to prayer would be found in the world of physics. That somehow or another we connect with strangers all over the place in a web of connection, and somehow or another the collective power grid of all those different people is operating in some powerful way. And all right, I'm going to tell you a story, Rick, and then I want you to comment.
Come on, tell me the story, man.
So over the years, I have been in hundreds, if not thousands of churches, preaching or teaching or attending, And one of the things I've noticed in the Protestant tradition in particular, not so much in the Catholic and Orthodox tradition, but in the Protestant tradition, they're afraid of silence. It's like they're terrified. So I'm going to tell you a story. One day I go to this church, I'm speaking at it, and it starts off, there's music playing when you go in over the speakers, right? There's background music when you go in over the speakers. Then they start with a 4-song worship set, blaring music, right? Just noise. Then they have what's called interstitial music, or music that is a segue. They even call it a segue music, right? Isn't that what it is?
Yes.
So when the music that the band does, now it's coming, let's say, to a prayer time. Well, there's actually music, but in that transition, and then there's music under the prayer, like this kind of bed. I call it like sonic wash music underneath the guy praying, and then there's segue music again, and now the youth pastor gets up and he's manic and running around and announcing he's going to cut his hair if they raise enough money. And then after that, there's music, and then it goes to the pastor at the end of that, and it's just constant noise. It's as though they're allergic, if not terrified, of the possibility that God might show up in the silence.
Can I add something to what you just said? As a worship leader, I've been leading worship and have purposefully had pauses, and I was told, don't do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rick, what is going on, given that Scripture and all the great fathers and mothers of the church have taught how important silence is? Why are Protestants, and let's be honest, Anthony, kind of evangelicals, little E or big E, they are like, what the heck? It's like, so, I can't hear God because y'all are making too much noise the whole time. Rick, what is that?
Isn't that interesting? Do you think it might be insecurity? Like if we're silent, maybe the wrong thing will happen. The wrong voice will speak up. But it also is a reflection for what happens to the rest of our day. I do love my cell phone. You saw me, I just took it out of my pocket, but you know what? There are times to turn it off. It's not being present. Don't you love that word present? It's got just so much rich theological language in it, being present where we are. And so in a worship service, hearing that person walk up to read the lesson, there's power in that. You're saying, oh yeah, that's me, like walking up. But to try to always fill it with noise, I think sometimes doesn't let us acknowledge who we are. But I don't think it's just in church. I think it's in the rest of our lives. I mean, how often do you think when you're sitting there at breakfast, you better, read the newspaper or listen to a podcast, do all those things instead of just paying attention to the good food in front of you?
Yes. How many times have I sat in a restaurant and thought to myself, turn off the damn music? And it's not because I'm an old guy and I can't hear. It's because how can I possibly pay attention to what's important in this moment if the noise level, Anthony, and Rick, this, in not the Great Divorce, but C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape. There's this great passage in that where the devil is speaking to the younger devil, and he says, noise, that is our strategy. We are going to make noise, and we are going, he says, to drown the music of heaven. And so noise, I think, is one of the most underestimated enemies in the spiritual life that one faces on a daily basis.
Yeah, wow, that's so powerful, my friend. That's really, noise. And that we forget that we're partners in the noise. We just lap it up rather than, there's a lot we can do to sort of just say, in the restaurant, I'm not going to go up and say, would you turn off the noise?
I have.
God bless you. God bless you. I have said at times, turn it down, please.
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit more entitled than you are.
But why do we need to always put background noise to our lives? Because it denies us the possibility of paying attention to the foreground noise. Or, this is what we talked about sitting on the, in the mornings. It's paying attention to the noise in our head so we know what it is, so we don't just repeat it all the rest of the day. And also that maybe we can attend to that to let it go.
Yes. Now, my thought, you asked this question earlier, I think for me, what people are anxious about, and I think it's anxiety around silence. I think that one of the things that they're worried about unconsciously is if I get quiet, I might actually bump into God and to myself in the moment. And that is terrifying. That possibility is terrifying to me. And so, I think that, we have to pay attention to this idea that I think people are afraid of themselves. Like what might come up? What thoughts, what stories might arise that will arouse afflictive emotions in me, right?
I love that. I might bump into God. I mean, God is always there waiting to be bumped into. It's not, but we, I think, put so many distractions there. And to notice the distractions so that we can have that unexpected meeting. The unexpectedness of it's powerful.
All right. What do you say to somebody then who says, okay, well, if you empty the mind, you're opening yourself to the demonic. I've heard that before from people, right? It's like, oh man, the mystical. Don't mention that word mystical, right? Or if you say, again, you're opening yourself to spiritual attack if you empty the mind. It's like, well, what do you say to that kind of thing?
Well, isn't it wonderful? I love how the Desert Fathers, I love the word demons, because what did they do to the demons? Bing, 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 bing. Sure, they opened their, they might have been there in the desert starving, but that opened their mind to the demons, and then they could do something about them, get rid of them. Yep. So yeah, that's a possibility. But as faithful people, we can identify them. Pow.
Okay, I'm going to say something controversial because I'm in a mood. All right. So Jesus is in the desert, right? And he is tempted. Now, this is my theory on that. I don't actually believe some demonic devil showed up embodied in front of him, actually speaking to him like you and I are talking right now. I think that Jesus was in the desert meditating, and he finds himself assaulted by these ideas, these thoughts, these stories in his mind. So, Jesus apparently was not, particularly worried. It's not like he was, having a physical conversation here. And how does he deal with it in the time of meditation? He doesn't back away. It was very powerful for him to actually observe in the moment these thoughts coming up, recognizing that they were temptations that he had to avoid in order to accomplish his mission. Rick, am I going off the rails here theologically?
I love that idea, because how in one of them they actually use scripture to sort of lure him to the wrong direction, the enemy, and he comes back with scripture. It's that they use all that manipulative stuff that can take us the wrong way. But sure, it could be I don't have a problem with that idea. What I also think is really important, here we are in the middle of Lent. We often honor it by giving up some sort of food, chocolate, wine or something. But what's powerful about that he's in the wilderness. He doesn't have his friends there. It's about a wilderness experience and learning in a wilderness experience. And just those 20 minutes 30 minutes sitting on the sofa is acknowledging that wilderness in ourselves.
That's good.
I love that. Yeah. The wilderness in ourselves. Yes, I agree. Now, we talked earlier about what people can learn from our friends in the East, right? Our Buddhist friends and others who, for thousands of years have recognized the importance of meditation in the development of a spiritual life or a spiritual way of being in the world. Again, I've heard people push back on me and they go, oh, that's Buddhist or it's this. And of course, all the anxiety comes up, all the worries come up, And I often have said, tongue in cheek, well, we have a Near Eastern religion, but that's a separate issue. So Rick, what do you say to those people? What can we learn from other traditions, and why should we or why shouldn't we, be worried that somehow or another we are spiritually sleeping around with another religion when we practice meditation?
Well, of course we listen to other people of faith. We come from Christianity, which came from Judaism. There you have it. It's evolving. there's a really interesting study that it was in the BBC recently, where somebody studied mindfulness. And so this is what strikes me, is you separate meditation from any ethical origins and you get in trouble, because people who practice just mindfulness can end up being more selfish. And I think that, to me, says, don't take it away from its ethical, spiritual origins. Keep them there, because there isn't that risk. But if you take it and just, as we see sort of in boardrooms now, the mindfulness thing, I think that's really much more dangerous.
Yes. Okay. Now, the Buddhists are very rooted in an ethical tradition, right? So what I hear you saying there is sort of the current Western scientific interest in mindfulness as a practice. I'm not so sure it's a bad thing, but I think that that's more about neuroplasticity. It's about bringing the mind to quiet. It's for purposes of engendering a space of creativity. I think that's a lot of what I hear in Silicon Valley and places like that. Now, that said, one of the things I just encourage our listeners to think about is, look, there is a wealth of things that we can learn from other traditions without being disloyal to our own. And that, in fact, as a friend of mine used to call it, raiding Babylon. You just kind of like take stuff and, use your critical mind to leave things behind that are not consistent with what you believe as a Christian, and take the stuff that could actually enrich your life as a Christian. What do you think, Rick?
Oh, yeah. I like to think that God sometimes is anonymous. God is so powerful, doesn't have to always put his name on things. That, I'm with you too, that the mindfulness, there's wonderful growth in that, but what I'm screaming at is, come on, people of faith, come on, my fellow Christians, let's take it back, because don't forget it. It's just because now it's in the boardroom, you mean you can't have it? So God works anonymously. There's a wonderful myth that in those years before Jesus began his ministry, that he actually went to India, learned about the Buddha, and then came back. Actually, I don't think it's true, but the fact that myth is out there is a wonderful story.
Yes. And of course, my hero, Thomas Merton, was a tremendous proponent of trying to find the overlap between the Buddhist tradition and the Christian tradition. Now, Merton was very, very clear. He said, I am not a Buddhist. I am a Christian. Anthony, one of the lessons I've learned is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute therapy hour or even from the typical weekly sessions. And that's why some people, even though they may have a great therapist, can go to couples therapy or personal counseling for months or even years and never really get anywhere or make any progress. And that's why I am such a fan of the intensive counseling process at Restoring the Soul in Colorado. Restoring the Soul was created by my friend of 30 years, Anthony, Michael Cusick. And what does Mike do? He helps couples or individuals experience deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. So Michael and his extraordinary team of counselors he has developed and trained over the years know that sometimes you can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience breakthrough. So for nearly 20 years, they've helped couples and individuals transform their relationships and their lives. So if you are looking to get out of the rut you're in, but you can't wait months or years, call Restoring the Soul today for a free consultation with Michael's staff. Call 303-932-9777. That's 303-932-9777 and learn how their intensive counseling process can jumpstart your journey or launch you to a whole new place. And as a special bonus just for Typology listeners, make sure to visit www.restoringthesoul.com/typology to download their PDF called 5 Ways Unaddressed Trauma May Be Derailing Your Relationship. And of course, my hero, Thomas Merton, was a tremendous proponent of trying to find the overlap between the Buddhist tradition and the Christian tradition. Now, Merton was very, very clear. He said, I am not a Buddhist. I am a Christian. But what he was looking for was, gee, what can we learn here, right? What can we learn here in conversation with this other tradition? So I'm not... And here's the other thing. It's in our tradition. It's just something that we need to reappropriate.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? We lost a lot of this in the Reformation, right? Because suddenly people became over-focused on Scripture. I hate to say it. That's a personal opinion. But to the exclusion of so much of what is in our tradition, for example, the Desert Mothers and Fathers and all the cloud of unknowing, all of the mystical writing or the contemplative writing of the church. And it just all became discursive thinking about the Bible. It was all about theology. It was all about making sense. And what we lost was this other realm of the unknowing. And how do we move into that space and trust that God will meet us there?
You know, this tragedy of Merton dying so young, I guess 52, 53, and, you know, over there in the East. And just, wouldn't it be wonderful to think about what his next steps would have been as he learned more about the Eastern tradition and, you know, claiming his own faith and seeing how much there was to learn and to share with the rest of us.
All right, so for those of you who don't remember, because we've had such a rich conversation, we're talking with Rick Hamlin. He is the author of the new book, Even Silence is Praise, Quiet Your Mind and Awaken Your Soul with Christian Meditation. It is such a timely book, in part, Anthony, because right now we are in the midst of a mental health crisis. I mentioned it earlier in the show. I did want to circle back and touch on it. Rick, tell me, how can meditation help Christians who are suffering from anxiety, from depression, from obsessive thoughts that oppress them? You know, these are real challenges in the world.
Well, I want to be careful. I don't think it replaces therapy if therapy is necessary, medication, but I think it can be an adjunct and a partner in that work. Yeah. So sure, I've gone to therapists many times in my life and needed it. I've suffered through depression. I've worked through that. But what I felt while I was also at the same time practicing meditation, contemplative prayer, I was still accessing peace. Remember, peace is what we're, you know, that anxious voice is looking for peace. And it's as though God is right there trying to offer it to us. So through therapy, you see some of the enemies, but through the meditation, you have this chance to practice it and absorb it.
Yes. Okay, so, you know, I've been in a 12-step recovery program for years, and I love step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. So that is the 12th step in Narcotics Anonymous and, you know, AA and OA, whatever your A is, you know. And I think, you know, in my experience, and I've heard this so many times in the room, how many addicts in recovery would say that meditation has, in many ways, been the floor upon which their spiritual life was erected.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, it's, you know, again, we see this everywhere, right? And so when I see a teaching show up in multiple religions, in multiple other spaces, I have to think to myself, that's not a coincidence. It's because there's a great, profound, universal truth in it for all of us. All right. So, Rick, I want to close up. We mentioned some books. In addition to yours, I think about Martin Laird's book, Into the Silent Land. which is a great book for Christians to read because it makes such a strong historical case for why meditation is important. His book, Ocean of Silence, is so gorgeous.
And there's a connection to the Enneagram, too, because he often quotes Evagrius. I can't pronounce his name.
Evagrius Ponticus, yeah.
Yeah, who had maybe was there for the origin of the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
So there it is, the two things right together.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad you made that connection. So, Rick, any closing thoughts for us? What is it you want everybody to know about meditation and the importance of it, the life-changing dimension of it, all that stuff? Like, how would you sign off? What encouragement would you give people?
It's funny, as an Enneagram 2, one of my sin is pride. That's the thing. And what I love about this practice is it's constantly embracing humility. Humility. I love that story from Jesus of the publican and the Pharisee, and the publican who's just saying, I'm sorry, I have mercy on me. The Pharisee's just bragging in prayer. Thank God I'm not like other people. And Jesus points out the publican. So to do prayer and meditation, you constantly think, I'm not very good at this. Well, you know what? Feeling like you're not very good at it is rich. And I think that's what Jesus is saying. It's rich to feel humble about it.
Thank you so much. Everybody, I want you to go out and get Rick Hamlin's book, Even Silence is Praise. Quiet your mind and awaken your soul with Christian meditation. I would also recommend those other books we just mentioned. If some of you really want to plunge deeply into these books are not for the faint of heart, but I would also recommend The World of Silence by Max Picard. But it is heavy reading. And of course, New Seeds of Contemplation by Thomas Merton would be an incredibly rich. Oh, Rick's clapping on the camera here. Rick, why are you clapping at the New Seeds of Contemplation?
Oh, it's a text. It's a primary text. It's fabulous.
Right. I'm always telling people, just read chapter 5. If you have no time, just read chapter 5 of New Seeds of Contemplation. It may upend your entire world. And then, of course, there's Thomas Keating's book, Open Heart, Open Mind, would be another one on centering prayer. Cynthia Bourgeault has a book on centering prayer. I can't remember it. What's the name of it?
I would have to take out my Google and search, but
Right. So her name is Cynthia Bourgeault, Bourgeault. I'm pretty sure that's how it's spelled. It's you bringing it up, Anthony? Are you looking for it?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a wonderful book on centering prayer. Listen, just dive deep into this topic, everybody. I promise you, if you do it, you will find that. I'll tell you what you'll find. You'll find that when you leave the cushion, that your perceptive appreciation for the world will be so much richer. I can't even explain what happens when you have a regular meditation practice. When you get up from the cushion, what you start to see is, the blue sky, the sound of birds, the color of the grass, you have, your mind has been cleared enough that I think you carry the residual presence of God out into the world, or an awareness of the brimming grace in all things. And that's been my experience, and that's why as an Enneagram teacher, I just think it's so important to strengthen that muscle in your head that can actually say to you, Rick, you're helping that person because you want their appreciation. Or Ian, you are caught in envy right now and comparing yourself to other people. Apart from that, without a meditation practice, you'll live a lot of time on autopilot.
Cynthia Bourgeault, the book I love of hers is The Wisdom Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's a wonderful one.
That's a great book as well. Well, Rick, thank you so much for being on. All of your socials will be in the show notes. A link to the book, I believe, Anthony, as well.
Yep.
And we have really loved this conversation.
Thanks, my friend.
Good to have you. And listen, typology friends, may you have love, may you have joy, may you have peace, may you have healing, may you have rest. Until next time.